late, which has happened before, then we will see her soon.
Is this declared?
So we are going to talk about another aspect of declare play, but there's going to be quite a contrast in what we talk about today versus last week. And I don't have a handout for you today because what we're talking about is not at all. It's not at all systemic. When we talk about a squeeze, we talk about an end play as we did last time. Those are kind of mechanically executed things. We talked about the elements of a squeeze, right? Needing a squeeze card and a menace, a card that could get promoted into a winner, and how we rectify the count and come down to exactly one loser. There's an actual process to that. What we're doing today, which is and the topic is which I call deception by declare. This is more in the realm of false carding and things that you can do and some control that you may have, but ultimately there's nothing technical or mechanical about what we're going to look at today. It's really you're just trying to get the defense to go wrong and pull a swindle of sorts. This is totally legal. You're allowed to false card. And there's and I would note one key difference. When we talk about if you are false carding as declare versus false carding as a defender. When you're declaring a hand, if you decide you want to try and be sneaky, that's fine. Because the only people that you might fool are the opponents. Your partner's dummy. Your partner really doesn't have much in the way of rights anyhow. They just sit across the table and do as they're told, right? So it doesn't matter if the dummy can't tell whether or not you're false carding, right? Because they've got to keep their mouth shut till the end of the hand anyhow and just follow orders. If you're defending, you need to be really careful about false carding, because while you may be fooling the declare, you are also fooling your partner, and that can be very risky. That can cause your partner to go wrong on defense. So I would say as a defender, you should probably false card very seldom. And it should be only in situations where you think you might have something to gain and where you won't cause partner to go wrong. What that usually means is it's a hand where like the opponents are in a game and you have all the missing high card points, and you know from the bidding and what's in your own hand and what you see show up in the dummy, your partner's totally broke, right? Your partner's never going to gain the lead. They're never going to get a chance to go wrong. So in that case, it can sometimes be effective. But really, the most useful false carding is done when you are declaring a hand, and we look at just the most straightforward of examples here. Let's say the opponents have led from length. Let's say they've led from a suit that is just headed by the jack. Opening lead against no trump, just for sake of argument. So let's say they lead fourth best from this 5-card suit that is headed by the jack. And their partner at trick 1 follows to the lead with the queen. And here you are with ace king little in your concealed hand. Which card should you always play? Ace or king? Assuming you're winning the trick. We assume you're not ducking. So we'll make this binary. Ace. Why should you always win the ace in this situation?
So he thinks his partner has the king.
Because he doesn't know where the king is.
Conceal the location of the king, right? If you win the king, is the person who made the opening lead going to know that you started with ace king? Yeah. Because if their partner had the ace, should they not have played the ace and attempted to win the trick? The good old third hand high. So if you win the king, you now start to reveal more about your hand. And let's say you have opened a no trump, and the defense is trying to account for your 15 to 17 points. Well, they're getting an awful lot of information at trick one if you win the king and you tell them where 7 of your 15 points are, right? Don't make life any easier for the defenders when they can't see this closed hand. You know, make them really grind it out to work out which cards you have and which cards partner has. On the other hand, if you win the ace, so that we haven't seen the king yet, it could be in declarer's hand, but could it not be over here in your partner's hand as well? Why? Because remember, when we follow to partner's lead, we always play the lowest of touching honors. People always get mixed up about this, about when you have touching cards that are equals, king, queen, jack, queen, jack, 10, etc. And I find that people get mixed up all the time as to which card they're supposed to play. It's actually a pretty simple formula. When you are leading the top of your sequence. So if you are leading from king, queen, play the king. If you are following to your partner's lead, you play the lowest of touching honors. This is the difference, and it really is that straightforward. You're leading, lead top. You are following to the lead, play the smallest. That way, when you put up the queen, what you do is you deny the jack, which in this case partner knows, because partner's looking at the jack. But if partner hadn't led from the jack, you give some very useful information. When you follow to the trick, you play the queen, you deny the jack, because that would be a lower touching honor that you would have played instead. And you might have the king. We don't know. At least there's room for you to have the king. So as a defender, you want to be careful about which card you're playing here. If you play the king, if your partner leads this long suit and you play the king, you may think, I'm going to fool declare. They're not going to know where the queen is. That's true. Neither will your partner. Because you have denied it. So you understand what we're talking about here with the danger that can be involved in following to a suit with the wrong card. So I think when you're defending, you want to be pretty meticulous about this. Because and I can tell you that that if I'm defending with you, that I'm taking this way ahead. I'm already thinking tricks ahead. If I led from this suit headed by the jack and you put up the king and declare won the ace, I will now put the ace and queen in declarer's hand. And I'll already start thinking about, okay, well, if I get the lead next, before my partner does, should I continue my suit or do I need to think about switching to something else? So I'm already working a couple tricks ahead on this, which I think you want to get in the habit of doing because defending is excruciatingly difficult. And if you check out mentally for even a few seconds when you're defending a hand, really bad things can happen. And you probably know that, from the standpoint of, wait, was that the 8 that fell? Was my 7 good? I wish I were paying attention. But I have to be stoic here. I can't let partner know that I wasn't paying attention. And then I don't know if the card is good or not. All right.
And it wasn't.
Keep this in mind because we're going to look at an example as declare where you're going to deviate from this with good reason. So another thing in this realm of finesses we're going back to some of our Bridge 101 rules and mantras that we hear. Everybody has heard the saying, always cover an honor with an honor, right? In case there's a card you can't see that you might get promoted, that card might be in partner's hand. So as a defender, that's why you cover. So knowing that most people are going to cover an honor when they see it, because it's almost always the right thing to do, declare, you may find yourself in a position where you can choose whether or not you want to induce a cover. This hand appeared, and we're just looking at one suit in isolation. But before they switched up the format for the Western Conference, when they had the old Western Conference form, which I'm sure some of you, any of you who are ACBL members, should have gotten. This was the old newspaper format. Now they've gone to an electronic format. That's the one that I'm waiting for now. That's just for the district, but it used to be our district here, plus 2 districts in California were all part of the Western Conference. And Paul Avaska from Las Vegas used to write some columns for them. And he gave this example of a hand that came up that was really interesting. And so this was the trump suit. And so Declare was in a situation where they could not have a trump loser. And obviously you are missing the king. In fact, we're missing the king, and what are the other cards that we're missing since we've given exact spots? 9, 8, 6, and deuce. All right, so those are the 5 cards that are missing in the suit, and of course the king is of greatest concern. In this case, this was a situation where I think this was a major suit. The opponents were in 4 of a major, and they had already lost 3 side suit tricks. So to make the contract, you cannot have a trump loser, or else you go and set. So they're in hand after the defense has taken winners, and it's time to start getting trump strong. So the question is, which card do you play? Now you might say, okay, it doesn't matter, right? I have queen, jack, and 10. It doesn't matter whether I play queen, jack, or 10. The right thing to do is certainly to finesse for the king, right? That is the percentage play, not to play for the drop. Well, if you play queen versus jack versus 10, is one of those cards more likely to induce an opponent to cover and the other less likely to induce a cover?
Yeah.
If you play the queen out of your hand, if your left-hand opponent has the king, they're going to play it, right? And the reason they're going to play it, and the reason it's right for them to play it, is because they're not looking at the jack or the 10. You know that. You're Declare. You hold the jack and the 10. You know that the king is the only honor that's missing in your suit. The defense doesn't know that. And so, and of course, and so the reason, as far as this defender is concerned, let's say they have king doubleton. What if their partner has jack third? That, by the way, if you're missing king and jack, that's why you don't run queen. It doesn't help you, right?
This is all the trump suit?
Yes.
How many jacks are in that?
No. We're looking at a possible position here, right? All right. So let's say this hand is missing the jack. Let's say it's only queen 10. All right. Normally you should not run a queen when you don't have the jack 10 behind it, right? Because people will, they get on autopilot because it's usually the right thing to do. We're not liberating you from having to think, but if you were on autopilot, normally this is the right thing to do, right? Because queen, if you cover your king, if Declare doesn't have the jack, then and the jack turns out to be in partner's hand, then you have promoted it, right? And then if Declare has queen, jack, and 10, well, you're never scoring a trump trick, so it doesn't cost you to cover. All right. So you actually have a decision to make here. If you play the queen, it's probably going to get covered. If you decide to take your finesse by playing one of the other cards, it probably won't get covered. Because there would not be, if your left-hand opponent held the king and you played the 10, and that person couldn't see the queen or the jack, well, one of those cards might be in partner's hand. So why would you be in a rush to cover? Let partner win the trick if they run the 10, right? So you have a decision to make. So Ivaska presents this hand, and I think it was Swiss teams where the hand was played at 2 tables. At one table, DeClaire ran the queen. The king appeared. They won the ace. All right? After winning the ace, they came back to the jack. Guess what? Left-hand opponent showed out. It was a singleton king. Do they have a trump loser now? Yes, they do. Because 9-8 were left over here, and 10-7 were left here. And you can't pick that holding up, can you? So they went set. So how are you supposed to get this position right? By the way, you can get this position right. Let's look at the actual layout. What did we say, 6 and deuce? Is that what we had here?
Yeah.
So what do you actually have to do on this hand? To pick up the suit for no losers. Now we could say play the 4 first. But if you play the 4, that won't work unless the king is singleton, right? So starting with 4 probably isn't a good play, because you're now assuming singleton king over there, which is unlikely, but happens to be the case here. All right, what if you led the 10? Because the question you're asking here is, do I want to induce a cover,